Aha. Oh, you're muted.
Hello.
Aha.
How you doing?
Oh, I'm all right. Just we were doing it's an aliens type game, the movie Aliens.
Okay.
And it's like D&D, but you're in space. And there's a complaint about the mechanic of the game is that it's more cinematic. So like in D&D with a campaign where you create a character and you play for a long time. In this game, like I had the character for 2 sessions, it got killed, and now I'm playing another character. So the kind of do is they just have a device where like when you lose your character, you just take on one of the NPCs. And it's fine. It's fun, we're just running around like idiots blowing up stuff. But just like worked all day. And I'm like, I just finished the play last week, so I shaved all my facial hair off. Everyone at work thinks I'm like somebody different. So it's been fun. But yeah, I figured it'd be easy just to do this, and we can record it. And if it's dandy, great. If not, whatever. But I have like a chart here. So what I'll do is I'll share my screen, and you can say like, So let me pull one more thing off something you shared. Yeah, let me pull this off. So think of this as a 6-man special.
Here we go.
And let me get the right file up here. What's going on out there now? Where are you located?
In Yorkton, Saskatchewan.
Oh, okay. So that's western, right? That's up towards like I'm trying to think like American states. Like is that like up like the Dakotas, but north of that, or is that further west?
Yeah, in that roughly around there. Yeah.
I used to know my geography really well back when I was a kid. It's funny, like things you forget. I almost moved to Vancouver once because one of my
don't do that. Don't do that.
Yeah, well, I didn't, but one of my students when I was corporate trainer was an acting background like I had, and he was like talking about it. Oh, you should go to Vancouver, lots of acting up there. And I hate the Canucks, so I was like, oh, I can go and boom in person. I always say like I have like, I grew up in a pretty good sports town, so I'm like pretty spoiled when it comes to like sporting themes. But I grew up with my grandpa taught me how to watch hockey, so I was watching like the Bruins. This is back like when like Terry O'Reilly and like Jay Miller and like they were gooning it up sometimes, and the great blood feuds of the Canadians. So I would say that there's one sport that brings out my sports Tourette's, it's hockey. And when the Bruins played the Canucks in that cup, it was like, oh, it was a good series. Mm-hmm. And now they're the Bruins are like okay right now, but the Celtics are the ones in town right now everyone's talking about because they went from kind of like being an okay team to like they're like one of the best in the NBA, and it's like what the hell happened?
I'm in a bad location for me because I'm a huge basketball fan, and I grew up. I had to like hockey, football because CFL, right? But basketball has always been my sport that I like watching. So I just
what are your teams?
LA Lakers, and right now I'm watching everything other than the Lakers because the Lakers are doing terrible. But I mean,
yeah, I will say this. I have a weird thing where I like to see rivals do well because I always feel like when Celtics and Lakers were rivals back in the 80s.
More in the Lakers. That was back when I was younger. That was I hated Isaiah Thomas. I hated him.
Yeah. Everyone hated Isaiah Thomas
before. Not the Isaiah Thomas now, but I don't like that name at all.
Isaiah Thomas, I always say like my friend and I at work were talking about people like a wrestling equivalent, and I was like, I didn't think of Isaiah Thomas, but QT Marshall in the AEW would be Isaiah Thomas. Just hates him. I remember I read it was a great book by Bill Simmons called The Big Book of Basketball. I don't know if you ever read it or not. Did you ever have a chance to read that?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I loved a lot of it, the stories about it, but talking about Isaiah Thomas was interesting, the stories I talked about. But I love the whole idea of the fluctuating pyramid of greatness. Mm-hmm. I feel it's appropriate. Like I grew up with Bird and Jordan Magic, so I put Jordan at like the ultimate peak, because
And
it
Kareem
wasn't just he was,
Abdul-Jabbar, just when he was going to retire, like that, he was amazing. His hook shot, I still see that thing when I close my eyes. It's unbelievable. It's
yeah.
amazing.
There were certain players that I was like to me, like what my one detraction about LeBron for a long time was he was more whiny and competitor as opposed to like get pissed and just destroy them. You know, I remember I first liked LeBron when he was playing for Cleveland, and he was playing they had a series against, I think it was Detroit. I'm not gonna, maybe it was the wrong team, but I think it was Detroit, and he just destroyed them. Like he single-handedly turned it on. And that was okay. But then he kind of got like, he did the whole Miami thing. And I totally get the idea, like NBA nowadays, you need to have like 2 or 3 players to really be a dominant team. I mean, that's why the Celtics resurgence right now is kind of weird because, yeah, they got Brown and they have Tatum.
Yeah.
But their defense is insane. And it's like they finally like listened to their coach and were like, oh, one of the guys at work was like, I don't know what happened, but they just turned it on like 3 months ago and been getting better and better.
The defense is a huge thing in basketball. That's like, if without defense, if you look at the Lakers right now, that's why they're not doing as well, is because they don't have defense. They don't have Caruso. They don't have KCP. Like they don't have guys that are helping out with defense.
My thing about James Harden was always that he's like, oh, what a score. He doesn't play defense. Like,
yeah.
And I remember when I was right, same thing.
Yeah.
Great player can get triple double. Okay, great. But if he gives, other side of the game, if you give up almost as many points, I played basketball. I was never like a high school basketball, but I played like, club teams and stuff like that. When I was a kid, it was funny because my best friend in my town was mostly white. I used to joke it was Jewish, Italian, and Portuguese. And then me and my friend Mike, who was black. And his parents got divorced. So Mike was like always taller for his age, and I was always big for my age. Well, his mother lived in Dorchester, which was a predominantly black town at the time. So when I'd go visit him, I'd be the only white kid at the playground, and vice versa here. And it was funny because when we get picked, they'd always pick him first because he was tall. He was so uncoordinated, and I would just try, but I got so mad. I spent summers like just dribbling by myself at the court, playing, dribbling, shooting, like just go, and I got better at it, but I always liked the sport because I always felt like it's a sport where like really the athleticism is really off the charts, There was actually one play by LeBron I was like, it was actually against us where we had a breakaway and he just like chugged it down the way and like blocked the shot. And I was like, yeah.
Well, we watch Alex Caruso on the Bulls right now. The way he plays and the way he played on the Lakers, it was unbelievable. Like, I mean, he's just go all the time. He's on the court, and that's the kind of player you want on your team. Is someone that's always pushing, right?
I always think back to like with Bill Belichick and the Patriots, and he always like Teddy Bruschi was a big player up here for a while, and he got hurt, and he retired early, but like he still did really well. But he wasn't the biggest guy, but he was super smart. And I always feel the same way with basketball. Like, if you can know what's going on as far as a play goes, I always think back to when I coached high school soccer for 1 year. A friend of mine was like, hey, my friend of mine got sick. He can't coach that year. Can you fill in? So I did. And one of the girls from the high school came up and said, it was a private school, Boston University Academy. And they were like, we don't have a girls team. Can I try out? And I was like, sure. I didn't care. So we got a waiver from the league to let her play. And I made her my starting midfielder. And everyone was like mad at me for doing that. But she had the best field vision. I always used to equate to basketball, same idea. And it's not that you're fastest, you're strongest, whatever, but you can anticipate the play, you see it going on. And in her head, I do the same thing when I was a player. Like, you try to figure out where they're going to go with the ball. And I just tell people all the time, like, defensively, it's not about stealing the ball. If you can make them make a bad pass, throw it out of bounds, turnover, whatever, just force them to make bad shots, you're winning. That's a defensive win. And I remember the players, like, at first were fighting me on it. And then when I got to them and like got them to realize, okay, this is a win. Think of it as a win. Like, you're beating them every step of the way. And that's why I like basketball. When you see these huge like swings, like 20-point runs, 18-point runs, it's like the other side just like gets tired and, worn out, and they stop playing defense and they run them down. But yeah, I am a sports fan, but I always feel like it's funny. It's like up here in Boston, people are like insane at times.
Yeah.
It's like, I always say like Fenway Park was never the same after they won the World Series. Patriots, the difference was when they won the championship, we got a whole bunch more like a-hole bandwagoners that were just like jack offs. It's like,
Yeah.
you know, like there's like,
Yeah.
it's like, you know, it happens. But
Yeah. That's
anyways,
IWA is like sports. You have to have an IQ towards what the hold values are going to do and stuff like that. And for guys that are just coming back, it's hard for them to even look at the holds the way we talk about it on in the chat. And that some people look at the graphs and the charts and they look at them and go, "What is that?" And it's the same kind of concept. Is that if you start seeing it the way some of us see it, it becomes easier. And that's kind of like sports, right? You start seeing it, it happens pretty good.
yeah, I feel like for me, at least, I definitely get into like grooves with IWA where I feel like last year for a while, I was really doing well. Like when Larry and I were doing the things, I felt like we were doing pretty well. And we kind of bounce ideas. I'm like, oh, okay, well, you know, I think this might do this. And kind of the why of like, okay, well, you know, 25's gone to 29, 4 cycles in a row.
Yeah.
It usually doesn't do that many times. You know, it's probably going to go to 28 or maybe even lower. I just noticed that like I keep tracking it here and it went to, let me do this down here. I'm going to shrink my screen so I can focus on the stuff that's important and not my gobbledygook.
You should have kept the beard, man. You should have kept the beard.
It's people at work are like, you look like your son. I'm like, I don't have a son. Like, well, you know, if you had one, and you know, it's like, all right, you know, and it's like, you look 20 years younger. I'm like, well, yeah, you know, I have a woman I work with. Her husband is professional Santa Claus. Like that's what he does. Like in for most of the year. Whatever. However, I said to her, how's make one of the rest? Like, who's like in the middle of May? We need Santa. But she said that she's never seen him without facial hair the whole time, his whole life. And he's got a, it's funny, he picks her up sometimes and he's at this, you know, it's like Santa's like hanging out in the car. But facial hair, like I would say too, like I had a roommate at one point and he was a big beard guy and he like had the conditioner and he was very big in like the grooming and everything. So his beard looked wicked cool. Mine was just like homeless Wolverine. So
it takes time. When I first started, before I had like a year in, it curled a lot. So I had some serious curl, and I had at that time a lot of people. I don't know if you remember Duck Dynasty.
Yeah.
Lots of people were calling me that, like left and right, and I was laughing because I don't own any camouflage except for what my brother gave me. So I was like, yeah, I'm not that guy. But
you wouldn't really Duck
It
Dynasty.
takes time, and now it's just pure laziness. Now I just let it grow. I don't even think about it.
Do you have the ZZ Top hair too, or just
it's growing because of my back. I've been growing. Yeah, it's growing pretty long. So I usually cut short from my head, but I just haven't had a chance to do it. So
this is as long as it's been for me in a long time. But yeah, I'm a mess. So speaking of messes, my strategies. All right.
Six-man, I was going to say to you, like Six-man is one of those strategies. Like I love Six-man strategies. I think it's just so calming and so unbelievable when it works. It is unbelievable. It is like magic. When I first started and you were doing the gold workshop, I just did singles. I was doing what you were showing and I was going off that. And then once Jeff Manning showed me how to do Six-man and I learned it, it was like, holy man. Now I have to stop myself and say, no, do singles.
I for years many years ago, I said probably back like 2011-ish maybe, Sly Smith gave me some like pointers and showed me what some setups. And then oh man, can't think of his name now. He was mostly tag stuff. Josh Haight was mostly tag stuff. But between the two of them, I kind of got some ideas about flowing. And I think for a lot of players, when they hear, like newer players especially, they hear flows or perfect point flows right over their head. They don't get it. And I feel like, and I remember like when I did that How to Win video, I was really trying to focus on like the terminology so you'd get that. Because I feel like if you watch, like if we do end up putting this out or like other videos, it's like, if you don't know, you're just gonna be like, fighting it, and it's gonna frustrate you. And I always feel that one of the things about stables get a lot of bad rap sometimes, but I always feel like stables can be really good because it can help newer players come along. And I always felt like it was a catch-22, because on the one hand, you want new players to do well at the game, so they keep staying in the game and make the game more successful and more beneficial for everybody. On the other hand, you create more competition.
Yes.
So,
Yes. Which
hey,
is good though, which is needed in IWA, because that way it evens it out. When you have more people, it's not the same guys hitting the report all the time, right?
Yeah. I talked to Johnny B about this a couple of years back. It was about around the bulk rate time. I had asked about making the game harder in some ways. Like, was there what, because I felt like, what if you incorporated that 24-point hold and that became part of the because right now it's 25 and up.
Yeah.
And he was, I didn't say, he didn't tell me to F off, but he basically said, we don't want to lose more players than we're already going to lose. Like, and I get it, because
this cycle alone, what they've done in steel and iron this cycle, I predict there's going to be a monkey wrench thrown into gold. Like, people are going to be,
it could be. I just started looking at the holds like earlier today.
Iron went 29, or no, what was it now? 30s went to 29 in iron.
Yeah.
Steel went 29, 27, which was 2 cycles ago. So I mean, they're throwing loops in there. So I can see something bad happening in gold.
I almost, I hate to jinx this. I was looking at it, and I have like, I always, when I go through and kind of wave off things, I usually rule out 2 cycles ago. That's almost always I'm not going to bother with it. So looking at just in gold right now, 29, 28's alive, 29, 26 is alive, 28s are alive, 27s are alive, 27, 26, even though it was 3 cycles ago, I'd say it's alive. And of course, 26s are sitting there at 21 cycles since the last time they dropped.
27s, the past 2 cycles, I went 27, 27, thinking that any minute it's going to hit, and it didn't. So now I'm sitting here going, I'm not going to take it again. Nope, I'm not doing it. I want to because I know it's going to happen. It's going to hit, and I'm going to be like,
That's like me with the 28s. I played 28s for like so goddamn long. And then I was like, there's no way it's going to be, I really felt to be the cycle after that one. And that's the thing too. I always say, trust your hunches sometimes. And for me, what's weird, I get vibes off the pairing. So for instance, like 1 and 46, 8 and 33. I can see those being
bunch them together too. So like 1 and 5 or 25 and 22 and something. They like to bunch them together quite a bit too. That's another thing that I learned on your gold workshops. That's, you watch every hold and every hold value, and it's interesting to see how they do things.
Yeah, I know a lot of the time when we break these down, and it's like funny because like Alex will always joke about how he either doesn't change his strategy at all or like doesn't like 5 minutes. And I remember Frank Snow for a long time, I'm sure he still does it, but he does his strategy almost as soon as he gets his bulletin. Same with the guy who runs Jackson McAllister in the BRL. I tell him all the time, he's only had like 1 regional in like last like 17, 18 cycles. I tell him, do you realize you've almost averaged a 495? How hard that is to think about that. You're doing that. We're doing prep work. We got numbers to break down. You're doing it within.
That's old school.
Yeah.
That was back in the 80s, late 80s when they first came out. That's the only way you did it. You sent it. I had to send mine like real early because I would get my bulletin so late that I'd have to send it like instantly. And I didn't have time to look at. I would have never been able to do what I do now. I wouldn't have been able to do it when I was younger.
I remember the fax machine era of the game. And then eventually the email, how it was this huge thing. I remember the email thing was huge because at first they were like, you can't attach any files because they're afraid of viruses and downloading viruses. And then I remember it was it was such a huge thing when they were like, well, we'll take files from you. We know you're not gonna send us anything bad. I'm like, yeah, they know me. But yeah, I recently had I shouldn't say this out loud because he'll get mad at me. But I recently thought to myself a way to possibly identify where their office is.
No.
I just show up and like, there's a guy who used to play the game.
I would like to meet Kimberly. I would like to meet Kimberly. That's one of my things that I want to meet that person. I know it's probably multiple people, but I mean, and probably a dude. But I mean, I want to meet Kimberly because they've been nothing but nice on their emails and they're very professional. I mean, unbelievable.
Oh, I agree. I think I had the perfect theory to how to meet them. And I was going to send them tickets to like an Indians game or like a Cavaliers game. And they'd go to the game with, who's not going to take the tickets? Send them down and say, here's the tickets, thanks for a great time. They go to the game and who's sitting next to them? I just be like, boy, I love pro wrestling. I wish there was some way to relive my old glory days. Just like, what? Yeah, man, I'm creative. I can write something and like, I really like numbers too. I'm really big into data. Just like each quarter get more and more obvious and like have like a Dick Jackson t-shirt on or something like that. But I never
a Big Ben shirt.
Yeah. So let me see if I can share the screen here.
Okay.
Go share screen. Okay. Share. Okay. All right. So can you see this okay?
Yep.
All right. So I know this is a big mishmash. If you're looking at this the first time as a player, and over here is let me click on that. Oh, that's not let me click on it. That's great. Nope. All right. Well, we'll pretend it's all over here. I'll use a pointer. So over here we have our cycle drops, what's available. So steel dropped 29.27. 28.27 was last cycle. 28.26. I'm sorry. That was iron, right? 28.26.
Yes, I believe so.
My computer burped on me the other day, so it like lost. I had done this already. I'm like, wait a minute, I already changed that.
Yeah.
So iron 28.26. So that's out as well. So there's our three nice solid options to avoid. We have all the doubles in play. I'd say it's fair to say. So you had shared.
Well, with Six-man, when you look at Six-man, you like, I don't do splits. I tend to stay with 27, 27, 28, 28, and stuff like that. And since I'm a flooder, if I'm running more than a few teams, I will cover them all, which means I'll cover the 30s. I'll cover, and some people don't like doing 30s. I don't either, but I'll cover the 29s, the 28s, the 27s, 26. And if I'm feeling ambitious, right? If I only have a few teams like I do in BR and IWL, I try to find the combination that is due, right? Like 28s, 27s right now are due. So you look at those and you try to factor that in. But a lot of people, they love to do the splits, which I don't know if you know what that means. Like, you know what that means, but a lot of people that watch might not. It means that when they do a 26, both 26s go, 30 and 29, right? That's when that happens, you'll see a lot of flutters. They won't hit Six-man or tag, right? And that's usually when they get mad. But I mean, I usually just stick with the 27. That's maybe why I like it so much, because it is a gamble with singles, right?
Right.
The way you run a Six-man is crazy compared to singles. Like I mean, I've done pretty good. Like, I don't know if you remember when I was in what was it? I think it was BBL, when I got that 500 in a Six-man strategy. I didn't even pick it. I don't know if you remember that. Remember Amin, one of my wrestlers?
Oh, right. Yeah.
I got a 500 off that, and I was like, that was pretty cool. I didn't even do that strategy. but that's one thing I'm pushing with NWL new and returning players, is to go out and try to find other managers that want to do Six-man.
Yeah.
Because teaming up is actually the best way, especially if you only have 3 wrestlers. It doesn't pay to do Six-man with only 3 wrestlers. So if you have like 2 other managers and they both give 1 wrestler, you'll do great. You just pick one strategy and run it out. It's pretty good.
Yeah, I thought about that. So, the 3 wrestler limit in the NWL, and we have a situation right now where one of the players has 6 wrestlers. That's being dealt with. Like, I noticed it a while back, and then something, and then Aaron mentioned it. I'm like, Yeah, I think they have 6 wrestlers, and now it's like, yeah, they have 6 wrestlers. They can invest up. They're like, I don't think they know there's a limit.
That happens in a lot of leagues. That happens. There's guys that go in with 25 in a 6-man league, and that happens. IWA can't watch them all, so I mean, it
Yeah,
happens.
yeah. I mean, there's certain rules you just gotta keep on top of. There was a guy he's been in the NWL several times, even though he's been told not to, and I've been like on top of that way, and we tell him like, don't let this guy in anymore. And I think he's finally figured out we're not letting him in anymore, so he stopped doing it. But I would say, as far as like, like what's good about 6-man teaming when it comes to like, other managers too, is it helps, get, build networking and friendships and like people you get to meet and know. Like I always think having Brad and Mike in our chat rooms are really good because they can bring a lot of experience and like perspective on it.
Yeah.
I always think back when it comes to like guys like Mike Cook and Brad and Seth. There was a episode of Vice one time talking about like, those like FanDuel, DraftKings, right?
Yeah.
And I was talking about these guys that were former stockbrokers that use that kind of mathematical approach to those games and how they would set up and figure out that they could do X amount of combinations and win these contests. And sort of a similar way, like bringing that kind of thing. And now I've always been a self-professed math phobic. I once had a fist fight in high school and thought of math and got angrier. I remember algebra. I was like, oh, so mad. And
see, I'm not a numbers person, and I love this part of the IWA. I love the strategies. The Gold Workshop was amazing. I couldn't get enough of that because it just showed me I'm a visual person and I need to visually see what the numbers are doing, and that's why I always share charts now, because I have to actually see it in order to get it right. And it's just one of those things when you chart. And I know I don't chart as much as Jeff Manning, but I mean, and I thought you charted lots. Like Jeff Manning, I don't know if you've met him. I
know him through the game, but I don't know him.
Above and beyond, unbelievable. The stuff he has, it blows me away. Like when I think I'm charting too much, I just ask him a question and he sends me like a bunch of stuff, and it's like, holy.
So like for example, looking at like what I have here, right? This is what I call the basic chart, which is just the first one here. It's just the simplest of what your combo pairings are, 1 and 21, 22, 46, etc. Right? Then here where I have this guy, it's not moving for me, but there it is. I have a touchscreen computer now, so I'm getting used to this too. So that's a basic, just what the holds did. And what I do is I track 8 cycles worth. I don't go back too far, only because I found it was just, like after a certain time, they kind of shed every 4 or 5 cycles. I feel like they kind of mix it up again. Yeah. And I always say with a grain of salt, I think it was May of 2019 was the last time we had the 25 correction where they would take one of the holds below 25 points, bring it up and drop one of the ones above 25. So that's always in play. But I would say this, that if iron and steel haven't done it, we're safe from that. So it's always the thing. At least we have that little tsunami warning. So that's that. Now, what I have over here, this chart in this area, this is where I just track what. Actually, I missed one of them. 26 and 29. All right. So what I do with this chart is I just track where they went to. So I kind of look at them, and I look at this from a point of view of, are there trends? Like, okay, 28s were big on 30s for a while. Yeah. Why is that important? Well, if you're a tag team wrestler or strategy,
and you're running splits, that's how you find out. That's
right.
Like and I go even further with this and break it up into strong and weak, like you've suggested before. And I do the 0.1, 0.2, and we follow and see what that's doing. And we just started doing that now, where we really watch what the strong ones are doing, because they're mixing it up even more than they used to, as far as what I've heard.
I will say, no, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
No, it's okay. It's amazing to see that though, because they do tend to, it looks like, the back end, when we talk about the back end, the 44.1, 43.1, they've been mixing that up a lot lately. Whereas you can't, even every Fed, if you track every Fed, you can't predict what it's going to do, because they just mix it up like crazy. So it's getting a lot harder. But I mean, you can still track it though.
Yeah, I found when it comes to the craziness of what the holds are like 41-2, 41, like
Mhm.
41, 44-1, 44-2,
Yeah, yeah,
0.2. People who knew were like, what?
yeah.
Yeah.
Strong
But
and weak, strong and weak. The
bear
the
with us, yeah.
strong the stronghold, which would be 25 and 90 most of the
So,
time, right?
so if I was doing it here, I'll do a simple example here, 45.2. So,
Yeah.
that idea here is, to keep my accent in check,
Yeah.
idea. Um, so the way this works for me, I always feel that like when 90's an obvious
Yep.
stronger hold,
Yep.
they're gonna go like if whatever is more like, so let's say for example 44-1, right? 73, I
Yep.
have it as 73. Now these are just the averages for the hold. I think I updated them. Let me make sure I did.
Yep.
I did. Okay. So in this example, what I'm saying is that I've noticed in the past year, especially, they've become more habit forming of if the 44-1 is probably a not miss, the 44B is going to 43B is the one's going to look up. And I've had some success with it. It was funny for a while. I was running cash and Atari, and Atari, I was going with kind of that theory. And he had that run during the summer series where he won it. And it was like he had a 498, 500, or whatever it was. It was crazy.
Yeah.
But it was like, oh, this is working, this is working, it's working. And then it wasn't working.
Yeah. Well, see and the one thing that I think the reason why I like Six-man so much is because you pick both 44s, you pick both 43s, right? And that's how you guarantee 45 across the board. Doing singles, you have to pretty much guess which one's going to hit, right?
Yeah.
And if you're running enough strategies, I guess you can get lucky. A lot of flutters, they get lucky with that. But the thing is, though, most of the time, a lot of the newer and returning players don't understand. A lot of the times, flutters, they don't know which one's going to hit. They have no idea, right? So most of the time, you'll see on the boards on Dungeon that there's a lot of guys saying, well, regionals, 501 regional, PPF, and that's all they're hitting, right? Out of 50 wrestlers. Like, I don't know what you do, but that's not good.
No, it's not. And I will say, in fairness to that, like, the way I always feel is that, like, I have a thing over here on the left side of this column. You see where I BRL, IWL. Mm-hmm. I have my initials for my wrestlers, right?
Yeah.
And of course, I have my good luck QT Marshall here. This QT Marshall.
One snaps right out of there. Just take them right out of the. Yeah. You don't need to run those guys anymore. Just let them.
I could retire. I could retire them almost all, but eventually I will. I don't know.
Funny story about retiring. I was going to retire my Jocko Marco wrestler. I wanted to get 1,000 wins as soon as I could, so I got 1,000 wins. I jumped federation to federation. I bounced them around all over the place. Got up to 1,000 wins, and the guys in SOS laughed at me and said, if you retire him with only 3 stars, we're going to laugh you out of the stable. And so now my goal is to get the $5 million and the 50 stars, which could take some time. But I mean, it's one of those things that I thought, hey, 1,000 wins, that's hey, you can retire and get in the Hall of Fame. They're like, no.
I think I've showed this before, but this is my panel I use to track the wrestlers, how they've done, and like, I know, nerding out. As I would say, last cycle, for example, I did pretty well strategy wise. I only had 1 regional. Now that's just a matter of.
You only play in the gold, right?
I do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
that's
only
rough.
in gold.
When you can do very well in one federation, that's pretty good. I mean, because I have hot and cold streaks with every federation. I mean, Jade and Bronze for the longest time, it just hated me. I couldn't hit. I was getting 489s and being happy. Like, it was sad, right? I was
hard in there, yeah.
Yeah, and gold lately was rough. I had to actually go back and watch some old gold workshops, and I actually started hitting again. So I had to do something because I just could not get a good strategy for singles.
Well, one of the things we don't really talk about a lot on the show or in the shows in the past, when it comes to like actually selecting your opponents, one of the things I tell a lot of the newer guys is if you have a singles wrestler, go after the tag wrestlers that win titles,
Yep.
because they're going to, if they're sticking to it, like, for example, I had US Male beat Christopher Destruction this past cycle. Christopher Destruction, one of the better tag teams with kind of Oblivion.
Yeah.
So I gambled with the fact that I had 3 or 4 matches I used for US Male. And I figured, well, I'm going for a max back end strategy, which he actually had the right combo. His front end was, which is always a bummer when you like nail the front end, your back end's terrible. You nail the back end, the front end's terrible. But if you're picking wrestlers like if you're on a budget, it's like you got to figure, okay, well, I'm going to go my singles wrestler against a tag wrestler because I'm going to roll the dice and guess that they're going to have a 43B in there and a 44B.
Yep.
It could cost them. And that might cost them, let's say they're both 41s. Well, that's a 4-point swing you could get, and that's 8 points difference, So it's a small detail in the game, but people
you can't do that in no limit leagues, but in limit leagues you can. In no limit leagues, a lot of guys, especially the flooders, whoever's on the title page, those are the guys who are going to be in singles. So they're going to be going big strats for the league title, right? Yeah. Even if they're a tag team 6-man, it doesn't matter. If they have a regional, they're going big. And that's the big leagues, right? In BRL and IWL and NWL, I don't know what NWL, but IWL and BRL, you can see the guys that are in tag team 6-man. Like my guys, I brought them in as a joke just to help you guys out and get some storylines going. And the records are horrible, and I don't care about that because I want to see. My main goal for that was to see how much money they would actually get per match because of the low ranking. Because I heard through the grapevine all these guys talking about, well, when you're lower ranked and you beat a guy that's higher ranked, you get a lot more money. And I was like, no, that can't be true. There's no way. And it's true. They get a lot of money. Like that one wrestler I have in Free Quebec, he's actually almost beating my top wrestler for money.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
Oh, hey.
And I'm like, that's not good.
Wow. And don't and
6-man and tag, that helps too, right? When you do 6-man and tag, that boosts it up too. If you go to SHL, you'll see a group there named Sith. He does tons and tons of 6-man and tag team matches, and his money is through the roof with 6 wrestlers. Like so if you want to get money, go on 6-man and tag. That's big time push. Yeah,
it's funny how the money is one of those things that I wish, and I've been talking to in the planning for the women's league. I want to really track things like the money earnings, because I feel it's a really good indicator of success. Now, without the multi-tag titles, it's going to be interesting that way. But I think it's going to benefit everybody. It's funny because IWA's, I was talking to somebody earlier who was asking, hey, is it really happening? And I was like, well, I'll have more developments on this next cycle, but it's getting there. Yeah. And I mentioned that, one of the things of with no tag titles or no 6-mans, it's going to be easier to focus. But also if we do a $5 limit, like it's just $5 per player.
Yeah.
Which I think is a really kind of a good novel concept, because it's a bare bones thing, but it's one wrestler and you get to pick, okay, if I'm ranked in the top 10, I got TV title shot or a league title shot, a couple regionals. It's going to be really interesting to see who people, if we all have only 5 matches and everyone's picking on the one guy who we think might be the weakest. And if they hit a big strat, we're going to get crushed. Yeah. But it'll be interesting to see what happens. I'm really curious to see.
I have the singles matches, just singles in YJL, and actually, I seriously didn't think that league would actually take off, because I didn't think managers would want to do 10 wrestlers with no multis. Mm-hmm. A lot of guys didn't like that idea at all, but I've got some managers that wanted to try it, and I find it helps me because I have to do singles. I have to actually sit down and do single strats, and diamond is tough. So I mean, it's nice to be able to do that, because sometimes you have to kind of go out of your norm to try.
You mentioned singles. There was a player in the game years ago named Christopher Capps, and he designed a lot of my spreadsheets that I use. And he would just plug in the results on like
Yep.
one tab, right? And it automatically populated in the
Yep.
next cycle, like just for him. So all the 6 of his guys in the BRL had strats. And the thing that was funny was he would hit like 500 or 499, but his numbers are all over the place because they weren't planned. They're completely random. And I kept trying to say to him, like, if you did a little more funneling and kind of filtering down, you might be able to get a better result. But he left the
That's why
game
it's
before
important
that.
to look at the hold values, right? You look at those hold values, and now we've started looking into the strong and the weak. It's important to look at that stuff, because if you're not tracking that, like, if you can track, like when I first started back, I was tracking and I thought, oh yeah, I got this. I go, hey, I watched Gold Workshop. I know what I'm doing now. and joining SOS, they showed me so much more stuff, and it was like, holy man, I'm way off. And it's funny because you have to look at every fed. You can't just go off of one fed. You have to go off of everyone, because the trends, like you said, whatever happens in iron and steel is going to happen gold, right? With the back end, we know that, okay, if it goes 42 to 45, we know that, okay, gold's going to be, and the rest, right? So you have to track every fed. It's important to be able to do that.
Yeah, I would say I don't do nearly as much as I should. And at times, like, it's kind of funny because I'll feel like I will listen to the chatter. I'll say, oh, people, or I saw this, or people talked about, they did this and that. Ryan, Patrick, he'll chime in and say, what are you thinking? And then we kind of go back and forth. And when Larry and I were doing I threw a button. Whoa. When Larry and I were doing the gold workshops, it was kind of good. Like, he would track stuff too. But I will say I do this as well. This is my little other thing here. Now, this is just breaking down where they went value wise. So it's a little bit different way to look at it. And I have these blocks are just to break up the visual. But for a while, we saw the IWA is very big on every other cycle. So we saw the 5 here did this little zone where, okay, every other cycle went 25. So could that happen in 46? So I usually do this, and just as a memory for myself, okay, 3146 is up here. I will probably play that just because that's a combo. I'll probably give it to like Alec Munchnop or like one of my like Tanaka. Those are most of my third guys in the 6-man team. Now, what I found for me,
a lot of guys, like when we talk on Facebook and stuff like that, we talk about what's going to be the drop, 27, whatever it's going to be. Another thing that we need to start focusing on too, that I find helps me, is that we need to start looking at what's going to turn 30, what's going to turn 29, what's going to turn 28. You need to, like, if you're doing 6-man strategies, you need to know what could possibly go to those, especially the 30s and 29s, because in 6-man, that's more important than knowing the 25s, like, because you run the 27, 27, the 28, 28, right? And you go off that. Now, if you're going with splits, that's a whole different ball game. Those guys confuse me still. I when they start talking splits, I can't figure it out. It's like, how do you figure out which 29 goes here and which, like, I can't figure it out.
Yeah, but I will say with that, what I did traditionally was I would do, I can probably show you here. Damn it. The old-fashioned way. Okay, so this is like Barry Atarians in US Mail. So what I would do with this often is you would see, like, okay, if I put like 25 here, 25, I put the weaker one down below. And the guess is that it's going to go, the higher 30 goes to 29 or 28, and the lower 30 goes to like 27 or 26.
And that's it. And once again, that's that. If you know your strong and weak holds, you might be able to pull it off. But most of the time, like this, like steel, I won the US. There's a funny story for you for 6-man. I won US 6-man world, US 6-man this cycle because I put the 28s in the middle. Okay, so I put 28 at 3, 28 at 6, right? And for some strange reason, I don't know why I did it, I decided my other 6-man team, I was going to switch them. I put the other 28, right? And I won the US 6 and was like, oh man, I wish I would have did that differently. But I mean, that's something that when you run it, you have to know your strong and weak, and they will mix it up. They will do this, the weakers, like you look at the back end, they do the weak a lot. Like they will pick 43-2, 44-2. Like they'll do that a lot on you.
Yeah.
And 42s, when you look at for singles guys out there, don't be scared to use a 42 for
Yeah.
going to 44, because that's one thing. A lot of guys is 40, 41. No, it's just 41. When you're using 6-man, the way I was taught was you use 42 and as that extra 43. Like when you're doing, it's hard to explain, but when you're doing your 43s at the back, you do 43, 43, then 43, 42, 42, 43, right? If that makes any sense, if that, right? And you put your 42s in there instead of 41s. Now, I don't know why, but that's something, that's the way I was taught. And actually it works nicely because that does help, right? But your 43s are going to hit, your 45s are going to hit, or 44s, I mean. If you run a 6-man strategy, it's not good for singles, but you'll win a regional, right? You can win a regional with 6-man strat. But seriously, if you want to really try 6-man, I suggest teaming up with someone, finding someone else, and then having one guy go through the strategies and figure out what would work best. Because the combos, like knowing what's going to hit 30 and what's going to hit 29 are very important.
Yeah, it really is. And I always feel it too happens a lot is you might say to yourself, well, I avoided the 25s. I got the front 10 right. Yeah. But then I missed a 30 or you know, like in your combos, right? And you're doing setting up. And that can be a frustrating thing too, because again, knowing what's going to go to 30 is big. I often do
the biggest thing for gold that I've found is that it never now watch it do it now. It never goes 27, 26 for 30s. I've not seen it go 27, 26, which means it can go 29, 26, 29, 27, 28, 26, 28, 27. Yep. Those are your 30s, right? So you go
right
through
here.
and see, and see if you go through and see where number 25 is. If it's 30, it's going to be 29. Right. So there's 129 right there. Then you just go through your combos and say, okay, which one it has not hit in the last few feds. Right. I think steel was a split. So that was like they did 30s to 29. No, I can't remember now.
That's okay.
See, I have a bad memory. So that's why I like this game so much, because I don't get mad. With iron, they did the 30s to 29, which messed people up big time.
Sure.
I almost got a 521 ppf off that one, but I messed up. I did 61 instead of 62. No, a whole number 61 instead of number 62, and I messed up on that. I would have had world for sure, but it's just one of those things, right?
How many have you won so far?
World 6?
Yeah.
I'd say not like just bulletin hits, not counting like how many in total. Because I at one time when I first started 6s, I won in every fed.
Wow.
One cycle, because I went crazy. 6-man strategies, once you see it, it's amazing. No, like once you actually see how it works, it's unbelievable. It's amazing. I think it is. I think it's just a beautiful thing. I mean, you look at a 501 ppf, yeah, that's nice. But I mean, 6-man, when it goes like 30, 30, 30, 30, 29, 29, 29, 45, 45, 45. I mean, it's just perfect, right? You can't do that in a 501. Like I remember when I first came back, I heard 501 ppf and I thought, holy man, these guys are actually getting like 30, 30, 30 29, 29, 28. 20. No, they're not. No, they're not. They're getting 45, 45, 44, 44, 43. Right. And it's like, well, that's not good. Who cares about that? When you get and if you watch like the reports now, you'll see a lot of flutters, a lot of guys in stables. There'll be three managers per win. So
Mhm.
you'll see like 3 managers winning World Six, and they all team up. That's why with NWL, I've been pushing it, because it's one of those things that if they start teaming up, there's stable, like Flutters are going to be mad. They're going to
No,
be very mad.
I,
Like, they're going to
I've
be very mad.
I've always said my ultimate goal with NWL was to get those players to be so good that
Yep.
they're hitting reports and they're,
Yep.
frustrating people. But
That rookie
it's
brawl was a great idea. They bring that back and get guys just getting acknowledged on the report. That's huge. And I wish they would do something for the 6-man and for tag for NWL too, because I seriously, if a team can win a 6-man in, if they can get a 521 in 6-man, even non PPF, like, I mean,
yeah.
that's huge. And the one thing that I hate tag. I hate tag strategies. I hate them so much. I don't like doing it at all. And I'm not the only one. There's so many of us. But tag, if you can win, if you can hit the report with tag team consistently, you're my hero. Because I can't do it. I can't do it. Tag is tough.
I used to have that. I used to have that like feel for tag team. I've won. My one IWA success is I've 11-time tag champ.
Yep.
And 1-time US. That was by accident because I did the wrong numbers. I didn't challenge the tag champs, and I did the wrong,
Yep.
but I won the US tag. So whatever. But it was for a while, I just felt like I was in a zone. And
Yep.
part of that was it was in my head, like when we talked earlier, you mentioned earlier about like the 30, right? It's 27, 26, not going to 30. What I often do is I figure out, well, okay, I'm going to figure out the 30 will be like this cycle, for example. If I'm choosing between 22 and 31, if I think 29 is going to go, I'm going 22 as a strong one, 31 as the weak one.
Yep.
So 22 is at spot 1, right? So then for spot 2, knowing that 26 just went to 30, that's out. So 26s are out. So if you're at home watching this going, okay, so play along. So we go 26s are out. So now we have 27s to 28s. So of 27s and 28s, what did they do? Well, cycle before that was 28. That's pretty common. It would be 28, 29 again. Could be 27, 29. So then we go, okay, let's look and see what we got here. So you get 1 in 46. And let me bump this over so I can better look at this. So you see 1, okay, that hasn't been 30 in a while. 46 has been pretty crappy. So maybe not. 8 and 33, 33 been pretty crappy. 8, so they're all pretty crappy. So it's like, okay, where's it going to come from if it's not 26? So that's the fun of the game, is figuring to me like, okay,
if you combo, like when you look at it, I do all hold values now. I chart them out all together from 30 all the way to 41. I chart them all out, and that way I get a visual of what it's been doing. And if you watch gold, like I said before, 27, 26 does not hit 30. At 27 and at 26 can hit 30, but not together, right?
Right.
And if you look at it, you see the trend where it's 28, 26 happens to break up the 29s, right? But that's usually when number 25 is not 30, right? Or when it's 29, whatever it is. Yeah. And it's one of those things that if you track it and you look at every hold, if you see like on those charts you have that you're showing now, a lot of the stuff that I chart is just pretty much just a visual for me, just to see what is happening. And like you look at the 30s, you look at the 29s, and it just shows you, it's unbelievable how much you can track in this game. Like there's so much more that I haven't even gotten into, like the stuff that we've been going in through. We've like looked at even tier systems and trying to break it up into even more detail. And it's unbelievable because you can track pretty much everything in this game.
So let's look at this screen. Now, this is what I call, like I used to say, if looking at the Gold Workshop or the videos on how to win cause people to have seizures, this is like the scenes from Scanners where their head explodes. So I look at this and I'm gonna let me see if I can guess what's going on here.
Yep.
And then you can. All right. So my guess is the trend bar here is showing it's up and down.
Yep.
This is the average value.
Yep.
its max values. So this is the range of the value.
It is gone 30, yeah, and it's gone 25. Now, when I first start off with say the 2022, that chart looks a lot different than this. This is all together. This is all right from the start of when I've been tracking, and that was back in 2019.
Okay.
I believe that's my first goal workshop.
So a total of 38 cycles so far.
Yeah. So
okay.
It shows you how many times, like if you look at the let me see it, my eyes are not as good as they used to be. The high and the low, that's just pretty much that 20, 30, 29, 28, and then below that is low, right?
Okay.
So it's just another way to look at it. And this chart, like when I look at this chart, I try to look and see, well, like I said, when I did 2022 chart, now it's a lot different than this because it's not showing so much, right? It's just showing what 3 cycles that we have. It's showing, okay, so at the end of the year, I'll look at that and say, okay, what hold has not gone to 30 yet? What hold has not gone to 29 yet? And then I start going, okay, it's going to hit. It has to, right?
Okay.
And that's that whole going through the odds, trying to find out which holds will go where. That's pretty much what that is.
So then we have the high percentages, the percentage worth, and then we have 30, 20. That's each time it's hit that number?
That's each time it hits, yeah.
Okay.
So 25 is a no-brainer. We know that 25 is going to go right 30, 29, 28. We know that. Same with 90. We know it's going to hit those top holds every time, right? You just don't know when they're going to drop it to 43.
Right. Okay.
And it was with 6-man, if that happens, it happens. Like most of the time when they do a 90 to 43, the other hold that's with it, the other hold value that's with it goes up to 45.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So I mean, it's one of those things that if you're doing a 6-man strategy, it doesn't matter if they drop it to 43. If you're doing a single strategy, yeah, it stings more because you had 90 at 45 and it didn't go 45. Yeah.
Sure. And it's just a good visual to see also too, if you're looking at this as a player, like a newer player, just to see, like you see bulk numbers. So you see like, the top part, 15s, 10s, double digits. Okay. That hold has been a lot more likely to be like number 12, 11 times. We all hate number 12.
Yeah.
46, also pretty crappy. That's 21 times. It's 26 or 25. Yep. So, if I'm looking at the holds for this cycle coming up, well, does 46 become again, like hit like the 10 mark or the 13? And then below that, like you said, if you're looking at this and going, okay, 73, 12 times to 45, that's a good reason to believe in that hold. Whereas, we got 62 with 11. I felt like 61 is one of those cruel ones that you're thinking like, oh man, 61 is going to be good again. And then it bites you in the ass. You're like, God damn it.
Well, in some feds it is though. See, this is where when someone comes from gold, they go into a new fed and they fall in love with a hold and think, oh, that's going to do good in this one too, in this fed too. And it's like, no, don't think that way. Don't do that. Don't do that. Because when you look at every fed, they have favorites in every single one. Where there's some that hit really good and some that just hit. And that's why I highly recommend, if you're going to track anything in IWA, track every fed. Even if you're not in them, the fun game when I first started was doing a strategy or doing a few strategies in each fed and seeing if I would hit in those before I even started playing them. And of course I did better when I didn't play. but I mean, it's one of those things that with 6-man strategies, the reason why I like it so much is because you can actually win and hit the report consistently if you stick to certain combos, right?
Okay.
The 29s are going to go to 30 most of the time. We were talking about this, I think it was yesterday in SOS, that there are 4 combos that you can pick. And if you ran them in every fed, every single cycle, you'd hit at least one. Yeah. Like it's one of those things that you can do it. It's just, they like to mix it up from time to time. Like when they do a split, there's probably about 20 flutters that lose their minds.
Well, that's the thing too, is I always get a kick out of, like, I see your posts in the dungeon about like the results of the post, right? I will say this: I would love if you put the very top, like what the combo was, because I always feel like, like what were the pairings? Because I play in the UWL right now, and I don't track bronze. I literally just go almost always doubles, just because I'm like, if the double hasn't hit yet, I play doubles because I don't care. I'm just there to squash
That's a
wins.
different league, though. That's a league where actually I've talked to a lot of managers, and I went about it all wrong this year. There's a lot of managers, they don't even challenge for the regional titles. They don't do the battle royal. They just stack their stats in that league, and it's funny because they will not. They want to be as discreet as possible in that league. And I was like, hey, I'm going for regional. I'm going for league. And the funny story about that is I actually won league being inactive. And I was so mad at myself. I was like, are you really? Seriously? I was inactive and I won league? Like, what is up with that? And that's the strategy, is that you don't want to win there. You want to win, but you don't want to.
I've never done it before, and I won't do it again. I get it.
No?
But it's funny because like, there's certain guys in the BRL that I absolutely know now, okay, they must have been in the UWL before because they got like 2,000 wins over 3 years. And like, how the hell did they get that many wins? Because I know some guys squash jobbers like, crazy.
Well, you look at Mike Drake, his top guys in iron, they have 16,000 wins or something like that. He goes in that league every single time, and he stacks up the stats like crazy. Like he just recently, I think it was last cycle, most of his guys got bumped out. And I mean, it's one of those things that you get a lot, like there's a lot of wrestlers or a lot of managers that like to do that because it gives you another opportunity to get more wins and stars.
And the thing people always ask, like, well, why is it worth it? Well, it's worth it because I can tell you, like, if you're in the 11th spot or the 6th spot and you want to get, and in the BRL where there are some monster records,
that's another reason why I brought the low ranking guys, because I know how good BRL and IWL are, and I remember a lot of NWL guys going there and being like, oh man, I'm never going to do good because there's so many high strats there. And I thought, this is a good way for the newer guys or the returning guys to see that, hey, it's okay to have a low record in those leagues. You can still win regionals and league titles if you keep pushing. Like, being the underdog is good.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. It's cool to be like, I remember like when I had like the Von Schnaps and the CWL before I moved them over, they were all in the top 5 because that was just the
I want to add that I hope CWL becomes IWAR network again, please. Thank you, please. CWL was my league. Actually, that was the league that I joined. And I have the same mentality a lot of NWL guys had when they first came to IWAR. When you go into BRL and IWL, it's overwhelming because there's so many high, like it's unbelievable. You can't even find your guys, let alone right. And I mean, when CWL was that little independent league that was like, in the sticks where only grandma and grandpa went to watch. Like it was like that was the league that it was nice because, and now you're gonna have the ladies league with just one wrestler. That is gonna be your CWL now. Like that's going to be that league where the guys can go into, kind of get their feet wet, figure out what's going to work, and then go into like IWL and BRL, because that's IWL and BRL are tough. 6-man is a 6-man. We're talking 6-man here. If you can win 6-man league titles in BRL and IWL, you're doing fine. You don't need our help at all. You're doing awesome.
I don't know if you heard or not. We have thunder and lightning here. The house just shook. We had crazy weather today, so
it was crazy here too.
But yeah, I would say that I think the women's league is going to be a lot of fun. We're working on setting it up so it's going to be kind of like 5 regionals will be from like international, 5 will be American based, and then we're going to have the listing of the IWAR World Champion for women in there as well. But I think,
and the thing that I like about it is that now you're going to be able to get in the report for the ladies titles. And they're actually a lot easier to get.
Not for
don't get
me.
wrong. There's tough ladies leagues out there. I'm not knocking the guys that are in there, but it's easier to get the 6-man. And I just saw some lightning behind you. It is easier to get the 6-man and tag team titles in ladies. So that is one of the things, but you won't have that in your league.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I mean, singles though, you can win a regional. Like I've won a ladies national with a 499, I believe.
Wow.
I believe I did.
Yeah.
So I mean, it can happen. Like it's one of those things, especially with the ladies leagues when they were dying down quite a bit there. You can win. You can hit the report in the ladies leagues. Even with one wrestler, you can do it.
Yeah, well, I know Johnny B he mentioned that in his response to me when I sent him a first message about it. And he was like, this will be great for the women's competition.
Yeah.
And I agree. I think it's gonna be nice is you're gonna have people playing strategies in that league with the thought, like you can hit the women's report, you know? So I think it'll be great. I mean, when I built the LWL, there were things I made mistakes with it. And that's why this time I really want to nail it down. And people keep asking for a timeline.
Yeah, LWL is like when you look at tough leagues, you look at BRL, IWL, NAL. That's
NAL, absolutely.
League, if you want to fight against the top flooders, NAL is like that's when I won 6-man world 6-man in NAL. I was like, I was like, come on, anyone want to talk about it? Come on. No one wanted to talk about it. But no, NAL and then LWL, that league. I always keep on going back to it because I lose my my ambition because it's so tough. It's just one of those things you just get beat up. Like you constantly getting beat up in that league. Yeah. You got guys like Robbie Blood and like lots of guys in there that are just like they sleep with their strats. I don't know. Like they're they're good. Like they know how to win with one wrestler, and that's why I like the ladies league idea with one wrestler because it is tough. It is. Actually, it might actually be tougher than BRL and IWL once it gets going because it is going to be tough.
I think it will be. I'm really looking forward to it's funny. I'm working on a couple of things so that we have like some coherent storylines going in, and then also what I want to try to do is have 2 commissioner belts. Besides just the IWAR women's title. So the BRL Global will go over there with the women's title. But I want to set it up so we have sort of one belt that's more for the trash talkers and one belt that's more for the guys that are not as much big on trash talk. Because I feel like, you might not have a trash talking type thing, but you might like competitive nature. Yeah. And I feel that, it'll be good to have that as a way to like, those guys can kind of go head to head. And then stats wise, we're going to probably try to set it up so we track almost every single thing you can imagine. Yep. And make that a lot of fun.
The fun thing about IWA is that there are many different ways to play this game where the strategy wise, there's the guys that don't trash talk. They just do strategies. And after learning how to do it and actually doing a trash talk when you're doing a bunch of strategies is hard. It is hard.
I can imagine that.
I understand that. I'm compassionate to that because it is hard to do. But the thing is, though, the IWA is one of those things. It's amazing because there's so many different ways you can play this game. Yeah. You can do the strategy way. You can do the trash talk, the promos, and of course, my favorite is the tracking. You can track pretty much everything and anything in this game. And it amazes you. Like I've had many managers, Derek Tuttle and myself, we actually find it more calming to do the tracking later than to actually go and do the strategies because it's so calming to be able to go through and just see what is happening, what trends are happening. I think it's amazing. A lot of guys look at it and go, no, I don't like that. I want to trash talk. Well, go ahead. But the thing is with trash talk and with strategies, not you're going to have cycles where it just doesn't work, right? Yeah, your strategy is you're gonna hit a 488 with all your guys and go, okay, I quit. Or a trash talk, you're gonna sit there for hours and hours making this awesome trash talk, and you're gonna send it in thinking, oh yeah, there's gonna be like 10 guys are gonna send me back some stuff next cycle, and then next cycle you go to check and no one says anything, and it's like, what? Right.
Yeah.
So there's lots of, but the but the tracking part, you don't get disappointed ever.
That's a good point to look at. And you know, I think too, you know, when you consider you know, the ways to play and the guys can pull off both,
Yeah.
it's hard, you know, hard. And like you said, you know, if you spend a lot of time, like I spend probably, if I had to like ballpark it, probably 2 to 3 hours, maybe 4
Yeah.
by the time I'm done, because I'm also like multitasking. But
Well, and I forgot the other part, commissioner. Like
yeah,
you're
yeah,
like when you're a commissioner, you don't have time for other stuff. Like it's being a commissioner is one of the toughest ones. It's very tough to please all the managers, plus try to, you know, put something together to get everyone inspired to play. That's tough. And I
yeah.
seriously think IWA should give you guys more rewards. But I mean, hey, that's
Hey, Johnny, if you're listening,
yeah.
you're
Since
watching.
you like us both, since
Yeah.
you're a good fan of this show, come on now.
I will say that
One or two matches.
I think they're gonna, people will enjoy the I think it's gonna be the Black Widow League. I'm not 100% on it's probably gonna be, because I saw some of the mock-ups and they look awesome.
Yeah.
But we'll see.
So you'll have the Yellow Jacket League that's in Diamond, that's singles only, and the Black Widow League, which is singles only for ladies. That sounds like a pretty good pairing.
Yeah, you know.
And actually, you know, it's funny because when I first thought of the just singles, I was thinking just of myself, because I have to do more single strategies. But the biggest thing was I want to see if any managers would be interested, because I know a lot of flutters, they don't like to be strapped with the 10, especially 10 wrestlers. They don't like that. They like to do multis. And
Yeah.
And I mean, it's one of those things, you get your 15 free matches, right?
Get those 15 free.
Yeah, got to get them.
I'm trying to find the right.
Last cycle, I didn't get my 15 free. I was upset. But this one that you're blowing up right now is actually the combos. And when you look at this, it's not, that's not set in stone. There's a lot of different ways you can run these.
Sure.
But the idea is just to get a visual of what happens where you put your 29s, your 26s, your 29s, your 27s at 30. And if you look at it at the top, it shows the 30s. You get what, 6 30s and then the rest 29s, right?
So and I was gonna say, like, let's take number the drop 26, because it's like a double combo, right?
Yep.
So if I'm looking at that and I'm seeing the 29s, you know, the 28s, so that's assuming that 28.
Yeah, you break it up into 3. See, this is the one thing that it took me the longest to learn from Jeff Manning. And that poor guy, we spent hours and hours, and he would be sitting there going like, dude, how do you not get this? It's easy. You just go up and down and to the side. Like, come on, man. And I couldn't figure it out. But once I did, I can't unsee it now, right?
Yep.
When you first look at this, if this is the first time you're looking at this, you're going to be like, what is that? But once you learn it, you're going to be getting 6-man all the time, because it's one of those things you have to know what's going to turn 30 and what's going to turn 29. And then your 45s, if you run the 45s the way this is, you're going to get 45s across the board every time. Like it's amazing how that works. Where I wish it worked that way in singles. Like I wish you could do that. But 6-man, if you pick your combos, if they don't split it, which they don't, I've never, now I could be wrong, but I've never seen them split every fed.
Okay.
In one cycle. Okay. So you're guaranteed you're going to hit, if you're running every fed, you're going to get a 6-man. Now, of course, if you're in flutter leagues and only flutter leagues, you could get bounced out because someone else could run the same strategy. Right. So it's one of those things where you can get bumped. And of course, the way they run the US 6-man title or the TV title tag 6-man titles, they do it where not the best strategy wins sometimes.
Yeah.
Right. So that's why if you look at the dungeon, you see a lot of guys losing their minds over that because they miss out on the US 6. I don't really concern myself with that much. It happens. It's part of the game, right? It's one of those things. It's going to happen. it happens. It's considered, if in my mind, it's like a split. If it happens, it happens. Then next cycle I go again and try to bump the guy that bumped me, right? It's just one of those things. But with 6-man strategies, when you run, if you only run one team, you want to go like with tag, a lot of guys will go 28s. They'll drop the 28s every single time. It's gonna hit sooner or later, right? With 6-man, it's a little bit different. You wanna try to figure out what has gone in the feds before, and that's why you have to track the other feds, because usually they stick to, they don't do 28, 28, 28, 20. They won't run the same thing every time, right? For every site, for the one cycle. So if you are looking at iron and steel ahead for this cycle, you look at iron had that crazy split where they did the 30s, and then steel, I believe they dropped the 29s. This cycle, like when you look at gold, 27s, it has to hit sooner or later. Like I was saying before, I picked 27 for my singles guys, even because I seriously thought I was going to go. So 27s is one that you might want to do. But the problem with this now, when you look at it, you have to look at the combos. Is 29 going to go to 30? Because they can do the 28, 27, 28, 26, right? They can do that. And since this has been such a gong show of a cycle for the like iron and steel, they can do that. Like they have every right to go 28, 27, 29, what is it? 30, well, 25 is 30. So 28, 27, 30, 26, something crazy like that, right? Where, so they could do something like that, but it's one of those things that when you're looking at 6-man, you go with your first three. So the way I was taught was that you go with your first two is 29s for 30, usually, right? So you do that, and then you leave that third spot empty. Then you go to your next one, and that's going to be your next 30. It's going to be your 27s or your 26s, usually. Right. And then you leave that 6th spot open, and then you go to your next one over, and that is usually your 30, 25. So you go on 30s, your 2 30s, and then your 2 25s. And those are going to hit 29. Like in iron, if I would have gotten the right back end, I would have won world because I had the 2 30s lined up, and they would have they won. They got the back end, right? So it's one of those things that when you look at this chart, it's not set in stone. It's not something that you should follow every time. But if you look at the feds, you'll see that, like I said before, 27, 26 does not go to 30 in gold, or it hasn't. It hasn't since I've been tracking. You know that that's not a combo that you're going to pick for gold, right?
And Johnny, if you're listening, you can't do that to us now.
Do it.
He's like taking notes, saying,
and just watch people lose their minds. There's already like 3 or 4 flutters that were like threatening to quit because of iron and steel. So go for it. Bomb them. Get them.
I will say a couple of things. I want to say, like, one, I'll say that what's nice about this game is that, like you said, the tracking versus the whatever trash talk. I also feel that what's nice about the way this is designed is one of my favorite features is there's almost no way to be like the best singles wrestler, the best tag team. Like you don't triple crown unless there's some sort of cataclysmic player, like, boner in their head when they did their strategies and they screwed all their stuff up. And one guy was like, hit them all. Then, okay, fine. But,
and that's, see, when NWL guys start talking about, I'm going to do tag and 6 and singles, and I cringe and go, no, don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that.
You can do that.
Honestly, no, I want them to learn, but I also want them to win too. Right. So it's like, if you're going to pick 6-man strategies, like this is seriously, this works. Like it's amazing. Tag, don't even do tag. Just do singles and 6-man. Tag, forget about it. Sucked.
what I think it'd be interesting too to see someone, again, this is NWL players, if you're watching this, getting that third wrestler on your, like, if you, like, you could do one singles wrestler,
Yes.
former tag team with somebody
One
else,
set, yeah.
and then former six-man with other people. And you could have, 4 different players working together.
And I'll throw this out there right now. If you're watching it, seriously, if you need help picking six-man strategies, don't ask me about tag because I hate tag. Ask Matt about tag. No, with six-man strategies, if you want to, you get 2 other managers. I will help you through it because seriously, I want to see NWL guys hit six-man in the report.
That would be so awesome. I would love to see.
Oh, it'd be amazing because it would. Because first off, when I first came back, the only reason guys knew who I was because of that big run in CWL where I won four league titles in a row, right? And that's the only. And then I won that, and that was gold strategy. That was the gold strategy, like the gold workshop. Because all I could do was singles. I didn't know how to do tag. I didn't know how to do six. If Jeff Manning never watches, he'll laugh his butt off because seriously, when he was showing me and Robbie Blood were showing me how to do six-man, I swear, I wish I would have been able to see them on the other end of their computers because they were probably just shaking it, banging their heads against the table going, what is wrong with this guy? How do you not see this? And I couldn't see how to do six. I could not figure out, okay, why do you do it on a diagonal and why does that work? Well, how does that work? What you mean? Do you pick both 44s and both 43s? How does that work? One turns 41, one turns 42. How is that? And I couldn't see it. And then once Jeff Manning just kept on pushing it into my brain, I finally started seeing it. And when I remember when I first won my first six-man world titles, I looked at the strategy, I looked at the totals at the end, and I was like, oh my God, like, wow, that's pretty cool. Like 30, 30, 30, 30, 29, 29, 45. It's amazing. When you first see it, it's pretty cool.
I'll say this, 2 things when it comes to the way you see it. I always feel that either the best examples of it are, this is going back, you might remember these. There were these posters they used to have you could stare at and it'd be like these blurred images. And you stare at it long enough, you'd see like a ship or a dolphin. That's one. The other is the Matrix. And that coming out of the cocoon. It's like, once you see, and again, like I had Brandon Bailey and I had Jim Gabbard and Jimmy Davis help me with it, and Chris Capps. And then, because I always feel like it was funny, I keep track of like my stats, and I think back to like when I had my runs in like the 90s and I did really well for a few years. And I'm like, how the hell did I do it? Like, because I was, I won the IWA tag.
They've changed a lot. There's a lot of things like 26 has never dropped before. Like I've looked back at old strategy or old charts, and 26s were not something that dropped lots. What was it? I can't remember what federation it was. I think it was diamond or bronze, where 28s never dropped for the longest time. And then just this last year, they started dropping 28s like crazy. So, I mean, it's one of those things. They are changing the game, which is good because it keeps it competitive, right?
Yeah.
But with tag and stuff like that, like if you look at this chart here showing you the six-man, you're not going to win too well in singles, and you're not going to win too well in tag if you run these strats, right?
Right.
In six-man, you could win world with one of these, right? With depending on what federation you're in, depending on how many guys you're going against. If you got guys like Mike Cook and Jeff Manning and Robbie Blood and guys like that going against you with six-man, and Randall, like if you're going against those guys like BRL, if you win world or even League 6 in BRL or IWL, you don't need my help. You're doing great.
I will say that usually if you're winning tag and BRL or like IWL too now, if you're winning tag or six-man, it's like oftentimes you need to have a 514 or better. Like it's very rare where you have like a 512. I haven't tracked it in a long time, but I do track again, nerd. I track world tag, King of the Ring, the six-mans, and you can see like over here, look at this, like runs by he had those guys. My God, it was Tim, Rob, and Jason had the run with those guys. And again, like the arrogance, like they've actually become the highest scoring 6-man trio in BRL history.
Mhm.
They did it like in like 2.5, 3 years.
And I find it funny because in BRL and IWL, flooders can't do what they normally do. They can't do if there's guys in singles, if they have regional titles, they usually say, okay, I'm not going to run a tag or 6-man strat with those guys.
Mhm.
In BRL, like if you look at the White Claw Outlaws, that's who is Mike Cook.
Yep.
When he runs just tag, and that's like you were saying before, when you want a single strategy and you want to beat guys, look at if any of the White Claw, and now he's going to beat me up for saying this, but I mean, if you see them in the regionals, go for it, fight against them, because you know that they're going to be doing tag team strategies. And it's
Right.
and if you look at the 6-man strategies that we have here, tag is pretty similar in the back end.
Mhm.
You do the doubles, you do the 44s, the 43s, you mix it up because you put the 45s at the back, right?
Right.
You've shown that before in your school workshops. So it's one of those things, it's different, but the back end is never the problem in tag.
Yeah, that's true. It's usually the front.
Tag is it sucks. It's just,
Tag is you have all the right numbers in the wrong order.
yes.
And that's often what happens. Like you'll hit like, I remember I had 516 with the Americanos a few cycles ago, but everyone else did.
I used to think that a 516, just a 516 was good. And now I say 516 and guys go, PPF? No. Whatever.
Right.
Don't even talk to me. Don't even talk to me about non-PPF. Come on. Everyone gets that.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's one of those things that's tag. If you can hit the report consistently with World Tag or US Tag, you're a god to me, because seriously, that is tough. No, it is. It's very tough. It's now, and I'm not talking about the guys that run 12 tag team strats and with 4 other managers. I'm talking like one guy, one manager, winning tag, World Tag, US Tag every single cycle. If they're doing that, those are the guys you want to get in your stable.
Yeah, well, that's the thing too, is I've always said that, and Mike Cook and I have talked about this,
Mhm.
and I said I would be happy to sort of host or help us, but I always thought it'd be really amazing. Like we have the IWAR draft, and that's a lot of fun. But can you imagine if let's say they made like Mike, Jeff, Seth, whoever, like 7 captains, and everyone's in the pool.
Yeah.
Go ahead and draft it. Now people would watch the shit out of that, number one. But
Yes.
if you added on things like free agent, like people would love it. Do it for 6 cycles.
Yep.
So you make there's 17 cycles usually, or 16 cycles in a year, right? So you get at least 2 runs out of it. You get a little break in between. You still have the overall year thing to go for. Because I've always felt that the stable race, because it's such a thing where, it's a numbers game.
Yeah.
Like you mentioned earlier about the stars.
Well, right now, if you look at Virus, right now they're running, and we've been able to figure this out roughly, of course. They are running like 1,500, 1,600 wrestlers compared to the other stables that are like 900,000, roughly close. Some of them are even lower. So, I mean, when you play the numbers, you're going to hit. Like if you're not hitting 501 every cycle with that many wrestlers, I mean, there's something wrong, right?
Yeah, and I get the whole, like the way it's set up now, but I just feel like it would be an awesome, and maybe they could do it. Like I tried to talk to Johnny about it too. I was like,
yeah,
and the IWA sponsor it, and like we'll run it, and just but you put it like, because the whole thing where I went to Mike about, I guess it was a year and a half ago, or maybe a year ago, and I said, hey, do you think if we got the IWA to let us, they would put the rankings for the stables and the players in the report?
Yeah.
And between the two of us, he does all the legwork. I just had the idea. And he made it happen, but I think it's a good way to kind of show like who players. I remember one time that somebody posted, I laughed so hard. It was like the top whatever number of players, and I was like, how the hell am I on that list? Because I suck.
Well, it's funny because I see my sub stable is actually doing pretty good in the report, and I laughed because I was like, okay, how is that doing good? But I've had a good year this year with 6-man and stuff like that, and I credit to SOS and no knock against any other stable out there. I mean, the Virus, those guys are very good stable. They know their strategies. They know, like, they're doing 6-man and tag every cycle. Like, I mean, even with numbers, that's still
Yeah.
tough. So, I mean, it's not a knock to them. It's just one of those things. You got to find guys that look at things differently. For example, in SOS, Jeff Manning tracks pretty much the same as I do, but our charts look completely different. Like, I track one thing, he tracks another thing, and when we compare that stuff, it's amazing. Like, it's just a look. Like, even what you have here, like the way you track and the way I track, we combine them both together. It's pretty neat to see how two different minds work. And
Well, I think what I will do, I'm going to try I was thinking about this earlier at work, and I was like, all right, I'm going to do this. I'm going to call my shot.
Yeah.
I am going to run, to give an example, what you've shown me here. I will either run the 27s.
Don't pick 27s, Von Snaps. Don't pick 27s.
I was either 27 or 26s, not the 28s, because I got that in the BRL. But what I will do probably, if I don't run the 27s in IWL, I'll give them to Americanos and Tanaka.
There you go.
Which I also thought, this quick little side note, everybody who has women wrestlers in the BRL, IWL, you're able to transfer for free over, your wrestler. But I'm also going to do a thing where we set up a free wrestler creation. So if you just want to try the league out, you can try it for free without paying for a wrestler. And I'll put all those wrestlers in a tournament, the new wrestlers. So I'll give you like something to shoot for. But what's going to happen, a side effect.
I learned from the IWA, I asked Kimberly a while back about the Battle Royal.
Yeah.
And she said that they won't do it every cycle. But if you set up a thing where once a year, you can do where the Battle Royal is huge. You can have all the jobbers in it too. So once a year, you can do that. Because hey, in a league like you're going to have with just one lady, money is going to be an issue. Trying to get money, trying to get, because you got to be able to, because you can't do 6-man and tag. So you have to find a way to get,
that's a good point.
Right. And getting stars, if you're only doing 5 matches, like it's going to be pretty cool, because with that, you might actually get more stars than wins and losses.
And what I'm hoping to do, by the way, with that league is we want to head, again, this is why it might take till May or June, because I need to know who's coming in.
Yeah.
Because I want to do, and I'm doing this in the BRL slowly. The roster is going to have a snapshot with like the picture of the wrestler. Then you're going to have like kind of a mini bio, and then I want to have a thing where it's like league, TV, the regional, right? And then I want to have major accomplishments, but I also want to have earnings, like where they started, so like initials, so we can track, so you can see like F.A. O'Shaughnessy comes in, and you have, let's say, $1 million. Well, you look now and it's like 3 million. Like, holy crap! Everyone else has a certain amount, so you can see that, because this money is such a great barometer of winning. And everything, anyways, but
it is. And actually, it's pretty neat with the records that those guys have in BRL and IWL. I'm amazed at how much money they've made, even with one match, even with and the Battle Royal is very important. A lot of guys don't like to play the Battle Royal. I know a lot of flooders don't play the Battle Royal unless they have a league title and stuff like that. They treat some guys do that. But the Battle Royal is a good way to make make especially in BRL and IWL.
Right, with the free matches and credit. So
yeah.
And I will say this quick aside. One thing about another layer of the game, where I always feel that the IWAR has this as a good advantage. And I guess certainly the NWL and NAL and LWL might have it too, like where you have other events going on.
Yeah.
Like AWL does things outside their league. It makes it so that if you have a crummy cycle, you can go, wow, well, how did I do in the tournament? How did I do? And we're looking at setting up and it's going to depend how again, I don't want to over promise, but I'd love to do a G1 Cup type thing where we have, because with that many wrestlers, and let's say we have right now, the soft list is about 22 people. And that's before I've really booted this out and said, hey, who wants to be in it?
That's pretty good. That's a good start. That is, and then once it starts, like you're gonna have ups and downs in a league like that, because it's only one wrestler. You're gonna have guys that leave and guys that come in and only stay for a little bit, right? It's one of those things. You're gonna have that. As a commissioner, you hate to see that, because that's one of those things you try to plan months ahead, and then all of a sudden a guy leaves, right? But I mean, in a league like that, like YJL, the way I'm running it is very loose. It's just one of those things that
Mhm.
I'm not a big planner. I'm not a big, event person. I never have been as I have such
Yeah.
a short memory. But I mean, it's one of those things that if you can keep guys active and even just a few matches,
Right.
it's a huge success, right?
Yep.
With a league like you're wanting to do, you're going to have ups and downs. There's going to be cycles where it's like, okay, is this worth it, right? And it's one of those things you just got to keep on pushing through it, and it's tough.
Well,
It's tough.
I really hope the $5.
If you have BRL and IWL, you're doing like BRL right now, right? If you're doing that, and then you're seeing the success of BRL, and then all of a sudden you bring in this league, and it's like, you start to doubt yourself and go, okay, well, maybe this wasn't a good idea. But it is a good idea because LWL is a success. It's tough. It is.
Yeah.
It is a tough league, but it is. I find that it's one of those leagues that if you seriously want to prove yourself as a singles wrestler, you go to that league, or you go the league that you're thinking about. You go to those leagues. If you can win in those leagues, you can hold your head up high. You can go into dungeon and say, "Hey guys, look at me!" Right? Like it's one of those things.
It's going to be interesting. I love competition. I love tough leagues, and I always feel like it's funny. People were like, "Oh, your wrestler has like 1,000 losses or whatever." I'm like, "Yeah, because I'm playing some of the best people in the game every cycle. I'm not in a scrub league."
That's why I brought in those records into BRL and IWL, because I know from I have many wrestlers in the graveyard that have horrible records because of BRL and IWL and the CWL. Even in the CWL, I have guys that I thought, and that's one thing I like to push with the NWL guys. Don't fall in love with one wrestler. Don't think like don't pick your favorites. Don't go into a league like BRL and IWL with a guy that you're like highly pushing, like, oh, this guy's my star guy. Because at the end of the year, you might not have the record you thought you were gonna have.
Yeah, and it's tough.
And whatever you do, most importantly, don't pay IWA to take away the losses. Don't do that, because you want the money. Just keep the money. Don't give up the money.
I will say I do that with only my guys who
are $5 million.
I will say I do that with Cash and Atari.
Do you?
But, only because they're scraping for spots.
Yeah, I did it with my guys, and I regret it now, because the money is one of those things that if you can get $5 million, that's huge. If you can get 50 stars, awesome. 1,000 wins, nah.
I can show you here.
Now that I look at it, it's not the same.
This is my my crew.
Yeah.
And this is like, I break it down by stars and and money. And like with Cash, I'll Cash and Atari, I'll do it. Lucha's in the GYL. Ari won't do it because he's at 6 million. It's kind of cool.
Well, if you get it, once you get up to that 5 million, spend that other stuff, like whatever's higher, go ahead. But that 5 million, that's what I'm benchmarking my Hall of Fame guys now, is that I'm going to get one wrestler. I don't care how long it takes me. It's going to take me a while to get the $5 million and the 50 stars. Now, 50 stars, I've been known with some people as 3-star zones because I don't get a lot of stars. But that is because I like to run the 6-man strats. I love to run the 6-man strats, and sometimes with that,
was hard, man.
You're gonna get 488s, 489s. This last cycle, like for example, that US 6-man champions.
Yep.
I think their highest strat for singles was 491.
Yeah. You to the right spot. So
it's one of those things that you're not going to get a high strategy. You're not going to get a lot of stars with that. But I get the 15 free matches. Oh.
All right. Well, it is almost 1:00 my time.
Yes.
Thank
you very much.
Yeah, man. This is great.
Before, I love talking strategies. So anytime you want to do this, just let me know.
Yeah, I think, I know Mike wants to do one. I've talked to Brad about doing one. I think it's a good way to do it. Kind of get some different perspectives. I know when Larry and I were doing it, because everyone's like, "Oh, you should do it." I just felt better like bouncing ideas off people and hearing their take.
Everyone does it differently. Like it's similar, but a lot of guys, there's different strategies, there's different ways. If you look at some of the managers, even in SOS, we have guys that do the strong, the weak, the 0.1, the 0.2, the A, the B, and it's all the same. It doesn't matter how you word it. It's the same. It's the strong and the weak, right? But it's one of those things that you look at the charts. Everyone charts differently. Everyone looks at things differently. They look at the 29s, the 30s. Some guys break it down to even the 26s. What's going to turn 26, right? Which to me, I mean, I don't really see why, but I mean, it is something to chart, right? It's something to look at because you want to see what each hole does. And like you were showing that one before with the charts where it shows what 25 does and what the 90 does. You know that those holes are always going to be the top holes. Right. So that's your strong. Those are your strong holes. Like if it's 29, you know that's your strong 29, right? And you know that's going to go 30 every single time, unless they pull that loop and say, "Hey, let's go 28." But that's rare. And if they do that, usually that other 29 goes up to 30.
Well,
so it's one of those things that you got to watch that. But track every fed, have fun. Don't get too mad. Have a short memory.
Yeah, just remember in 3 weeks you can try again, right?
Yeah.
So, well, thanks for doing this, man. I appreciate it. Well,
no problem.
I'll try to.
And the Vaughn snaps are still terrible. I hope they don't win.
Well, we'll find out. So in a couple of days, right?
Now,
Thursday.
If they do switch it and do 27, 26 at 30, I'm never doing the show again.
I was gonna say, Johnny's at home going, good, yes.
he's curling his mustache as we speak.
Right. Oh,
I think he has a mustache. I think he has a curly mustache.
We'll have to ask him that. Do you have facial hair? Yeah, he's somewhere twirling his.
But thank you
beard.
very much for letting me do this. It's a lot of fun. And like I said before, if anyone in NWL wants to talk six-man strategies, I am always for it. So let me know.
All right. Well,
have a good night.
Thanks, man. I'll talk to you later.
Yep. Bye.
Bye. How do I shut this off? And end. Thanks for watching. Good luck to everybody, except for my opponents.